we getting a good crowd here today?
Looks like we're doing pretty good.
Excellent.
All right, are we ready? We're ready. This is us. Well, okay. That was a television show, but this is the Clinical Consultation Network. We do this every Tuesday at 12:30. So glad you could join us. I'm Bruce Davis. This is our fourth Tuesday feature. We have Dr. Wanda Brown Ramseur here to talk to us today about the C.U.E Trauma Camp Next Level Treatment. And so we're going to have her come on in just a moment and introduce her, or actually my co-host here, Juanita St. Croix, is going to introduce her in just a moment. But just to give you a little bit of an idea of what's upcoming here on Clinical Consultation Network, we're not going to be on next week. So it's July 4th. That's a big day down here in the States, Juanita. Of course, you're part of the States now.
I am, and I will celebrate.
So. Yeah. So we've got a big holiday there. We will not be having a Clinical Consultation Network next week. The following week, we have Kramer Davis. Kramer Davis is a sequel or an offshoot of the Lee Clinic in Louisville, Kentucky. And Kramer Davis is going to be an outpost here in Nashville. And so they are going to be on here to talk about their interdisciplinary service for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They provide everything from general medicine all the way to behavior analysis to psychotherapy and counseling and everything in between. So that's going to be a very interesting presentation by Dr. Matt Holder that we have on July 11th. Everybody, I think, is probably familiar with Karen Harvey, who is also someone who works in trauma informed care. And so she is going to be here to talk to us on July 18th. I hope everybody can make it for that. And then on July 25th, we're still trying to work out who our fourth Tuesday feature during July is going to be, but that is our fourth Tuesday feature where we have a collaboration between NAD and the Clinical Consultation Network. So hope you can join us in those upcoming presentations. And I introduced my co-host, Juanita St. Croix. We also have our producer, Babs Tierno, and Dr. Brown Ramseur. Juanita, take it away.
Great. I am thrilled today to introduce you to Dr. Wanda Brown Ramseur. I did not know where to start when I was completing a bio for her. She submitted some information, and then a Google pulled up about 7 million other pages that I tried to weed through to get you some information. So anyway, here are some things that I think you need to know about Dr. Brown Ramseur. She is a doctor of education psychology, or a doctor of education in psychology of counseling. She holds all of these designations, which many of which I had to look up. They are different than our Canadian ones at times. So she's a trauma and addiction professional in private practice with Steps Towards Success, which is located in Greensboro, North Carolina. She has over 25 years of experience working with people and their families, delivering specialized trauma responsive training for people with mental health challenges who may or may not also have a concurrent IDD, intellectual developmental disability. Dr. Brown Ramseur has worked in a variety of human service disciplines with expertise in addictive processes and integration of unresolved trauma issues. She specializes in the traumatic impact on development and the anti-stimulation of visions for a child to dream of experience a balanced and prosperous future. What a beautiful way to put that. I did not create that sentence. Dr. Brown Ramseur is the author of A Child Without a Name, Finding Love Through Pain, which is both a memoir and a personal story of trauma and healing. Dr. Wanda practices an understanding of human development that goes beyond the narrow confines of any one specialty and demonstrates the highest levels of commitment to the mental health profession by offering therapy options in a number of treatment areas. Dr. Brown Ramseur is the clinical director, founder, and owner of Steps Towards Success, where she uses EMDR as a comprehensive approach to psychotherapy, as well as alpha stir cranial electrotherapy stimulation, which is CES, when treating depression, anxiety, and insomnia. She uses trauma-focused CBT and DBT also as part of the therapeutic program. Dr. Brown Ramseur is a clinically certified sex offender treatment specialist with the National Association of Forensics Counselors. Her most recent achievement for adolescents is the development of trauma family camps, which she's going to speak to us about today. Dr. Ramseur also provides clinical supervision, continuing education, unit seminars, professional development coaching, and test preparation for counselors seeking certification or licensure. She is also one of NAD's most recent recipients of the Clinical Competency Certification, and you will find her speaking at the NAD Ohio Annual Conference this year in July in Dublin, Ohio. So we're going to get to meet Wanda shortly, right after we do our little smarticle, which is where I get to nerd out. So let's get to today's smarticle. It isn't exactly a research article. It's a bit of a summary, an article about intergenerational trauma and some of the work that goes into it. The article I took a look at closely is The Legacy of Trauma. An emerging line of research is exploring how historical and cultural trauma affects survivors' children for generations to come. The author is Tori DeAngelis. So the article, there's a line of research in clinical work in psychology and related disciplines in the late 2010s that explored whether or not mass cultural and historical traumas affect future generations. So the article highlighted a specific researcher, Canadian researcher, working on his doctoral thesis, who was living at the time in the Ukraine. This is long before the current war. There's no other way to put it, really, war in the Ukraine. And he had noticed common characteristics in the community in which he lived. And from his opinion, there appeared to be some sort of a social hostility and a general lack of trust of people. So moving on, his inquiries into members of his community reflected back to a time called Holodomor, which was the mass starvation of millions of Soviet Ukrainians from 1932 to 33. So, 75 years earlier, considered by many as an intentional genocide orchestrated by Joseph Stalin's regime. So conversations he had around that at the time led him to do a qualitative study involving 45 participants from 3 different generations, 15 Ukrainian families who had lived through the Holodomor and their children and grandchildren. The outcomes that he had from that study led him to do a larger study, which was still in the works at the time of the writing of the article. But what he did find was that there was a sense of that trauma did transfer down from generations from the grandparents who had experienced the initial trauma down to their children and grandchildren. And there was an impact on the grandchildren at many different levels related to the initial trauma. So Bezos's observations were very consistent with other research studies that were being done around the same time on the intergenerational effects of the Holocaust, the Khmer Rouge killings in Cambodia, Rwandan genocide, and the displacement of American Indians and the enslavement of African Americans. The outcomes of all of these studies indicated that the transgenerational effects of trauma are not only psychological, but familial, social, cultural, neurobiological, and possibly even genetic. So what still needs to be done? An awful lot. So there have been large-scale studies done, particularly around the Holocaust, PTSD at the time of the actual Holocaust, studies of the survivors, their descendants, and all of the research on that and their outcomes is helping to further a generalized theory about multi-generational legacies of trauma. These studies about the Holocaust include examining parents, parenting styles, upbringing, the effects of influences had on their own lives, and family history and demographics. So what we're looking at now, many of the studies that were ongoing were related to large mass cultural trauma. So ongoing work now around Native Americans, Native Canadians, and particular experiences with residential schools and the trauma that resulted from that and how that impacts families down different lines of generations, as well as ongoing studies into the enslavement of African American peoples in the United States in particularly, and the impact that has had at a large scale and at an individual scale. So this connects very closely with Dr. Wanda Brown Ramseur's talk with us today, which is about helping families heal from trauma and how she does that in some particular work that she does. So with individual trauma, obviously, it's no surprise that it will likely have the same generational impact as mass cultural and historical trauma for groups. So Dr. Wanda Brown Ramseur is here joining us today. I've put a couple of extra articles for reading, some additional reading if people are interested on the next slide. I think, did I do that? I meant to. Anyway, further reading on this topics on both mass genocide, mass cultural trauma, and individualized trauma. And that brings us to me delightedly introducing you to Dr. Wanda Brown Ramseur, who I have barely gotten to know yet, but I'm looking forward to getting to know a lot more in the future and spending time with. And I'm really looking forward to hearing a little piece of information about Dr. Wanda Brown Ramseur that not many people know. Here's your little fun tip. Well,
Thank you. Thank you. Fun tips first. When I was first asked that question, I said, I'm always so serious. I really had to do a lot of thinking, and I went out and started interviewing other people. Tell me some fun things about myself. Because I'm always working and so serious, but different ones began to point out to me, well, remember now you have two cats. One's Jazzy, that she thinks she's a diva. You have another cat whose name is Paint Paint. Paint Paint has this smudge on his face, like you've been in some paint, forgot to wipe it off. And that's how he came about with Paint Paint. So I took in a rescue dog one day, just a tiny, tiny puppy. And it's a pit, actually, originally a pit bull.
oh,
But bringing the dog and integrating the dog in with the cats, which have a domain, this dog does not realize he's a pit. So because they regenerated him into a pet bull. Not a pit bull, but a pet bull. Yes. And so this pit bull sleeps with them and they just have a ball. He has a paw print on his back. And so his name is Paul, Pawla, Paula.
oh,
Yeah. And so now the dog anyway, she does not know which gender, so we just call her Paula.
how beautiful.
And I enjoy cooking. I cook. I love nails and my shoe collection. That's a secret. It's kind of like an addiction. Wherever I travel, I'm buying shoes. So I do a lot of drama, writing. And I actually wrote a play on shoes. So the shoes that you select is symbolic for your personality. And whatever type state of mind or mental state you in, that's the type of shoes that you wear. If in depression, you wear the heels because it gets you high. Instead of taking medication, you wear different types of shoes. So that's the fun side of me. I enjoy everything that I do. Most of all, I really, really enjoy my work.
So I hesitate to ask this question, Dr. Brown Ramseur, but what does it mean if you like to wear cowboy boots?
That means that means that you're an adventurous person.
Okay.
Very adventurous, and you're very open-minded.
Okay.
And you're receptive to ideas coming, and you're always ready. You're the type of person that don't get stuck in one little category.
By golly, see, Juanita, you're
Yeah.
gonna have to watch
That
those
suits
judgments.
That definitely suits him. And I have to say, Wanda, like, I feel like we could be best friends. Like, I'm gonna have to like try to make you my best friend now, because all of that is stuff I love.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
And
Yes,
I want to say one other thing though. I think the rivalry between cats and dogs is overrated to some degree because my dog has had great friendships with cats.
just they are wonderful together.
Yeah.
Yes, they sleep together. They of course they train to go outside to use the restroom, and there goes Paint right behind Paula, going outside and going in different directions out in the yard. And it's amazing just to
Yeah.
watch them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And now Paint has been with me almost 20 years. So that also ties into my work, the power of human connection.
mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Paint is deaf now, and so he watches your facial expression, your body language, and that has taught me so much, even in my own work, working with the intellectual developmental, disabilities.
Mhm.
Um, it's an opportunity that human connection makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
You're going to hear me talk about the next level of treatment, and it really involves a lot of individuals, the stakeholders, that human connection that instills that hope within the spirit. And I really got this idea with actually working with my cat and my animals.
Yeah. I
When I'm
agree
not,
with
when I'm not connected, because if Paint is deaf and is not hearing sound and all the elements that motivates our world, you begin to see a state of depression,
Yeah.
even with the animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just touching and loving and my tone of voice to the cat. He Paint doesn't realize that he's not deaf, that he is deaf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
That's
Because
beautiful.
I've not changed my way of treating him because he's deaf.
Hmm.
that's interesting stuff. And I do see the application of that to
Mhm.
a lot of the work that you're doing. It seems to fit right in.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. Yes. So Paint and Jazz and Paula is evidence based.
There you go.
You will have to add them to your list of research collaborators.
They
Exactly.
definitely deserve some credit.
Definitely. Yes.
Good.
Well, thank you for all that interesting information. That's wonderful. And I think you have a short PowerPoint to share with us too as we go through.
Yes. Yes. So
Well,
are we ready?
we're ready.
Okay. Let's see.
I'm ready.
You ready? I'm doing this. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Ah, there we go.
Wonderful.
Okay, so you see Steps Towards Success, which is my own company, founder, training institute. What you see here is the first stage is when I'm working with my consumers that come in. I use a jar of peaches. And the peaches here on your left, they're spoiled peaches. And this is the way I'm communicating with the IDD population and all my clients that come through. Before going into a session, I go into a meditation emotional journey with the client. Spoiled peaches and say, okay, this is a jar of spoiled peaches. Now, just because they are spoiled, it doesn't mean they're not peaches. It just means I cannot use them. All right. So the jar of spoiled peaches is symbolic for the information the client has received going through the trauma. The the spoiled peaches is their brain. It's symbolic for their brain because since I specialize in trauma and the brain and that intergenerational messages goes into the client's brain, their experiences, the cognitive belief that's connected to that traumatic event goes into the brain. And so today, and so I tell my clients, you don't come to me for counseling. You come to me to receive new information because life will eventually have a collision with the truth because you have such a special purpose in this universe. And sometimes it's the messages that's connected to the traumatic events and the intergenerational messages it creates a hindrance, a barrier that's keeping you from discovering that part of you that the trauma never touched. That true you, that opportunity for you to discover who you are without the labels, without the pain, without the trauma, without the intergenerational messages. So when you come to me, I help you to release those new peaches. Every new piece of information you get is what you are receiving for you to discover that true you today. So at the end of your sessions, or this 8, 12-week session, whatever, you'll have your own new peaches. So here we go. The C.U.E trauma camp. The C.U.E trauma camp, I'm putting as trauma-informed next level of treatment. Um, I, Part of my background, I work a lot with residential facilities that provide placement for the intellectual, developmental, disabled clientele. Um, and I find I began to just really hurt from a lot of the information I began to discover going into the facilities. So I have designed a series of training that specialize just for the non-clinical direct provider. Because what I found you cannot put a heart in a suit, but you can put a suit over a heart. So a lot of these the limited education, they really love their work. And so a lot of them was not having a lot of information or the correct training to really make a difference and really work with the IDD population to keep that human connection in a level where it helped them to develop and to feel good about themselves. So I also write spoken words. And so this is right, I'm gonna just share just a little bit. Um, this is called SCAR. Okay. SCAR is we have lots of scars. I found a lot of scars with when I'm working with the clients. I'm gonna get this to play in here. And I'm not gonna play it out. My name is Scott. And I wrote this. My nickname is Pat. Let me tell you right away, when you speak, I need you to speak very loud. My hearing over the years is not like it used to be. Yes, Scar is my name. I'm here to stay. Now, the heart is my home, even though you will find me visiting other locations in the community with the body. But most of the time, you can return right here on Heartbeat Street. Let me share a little more about myself. I go years back. I just started out as a painful sore that was birthed through a prolonged traumatic experience of sexual abuse, neglect, and abandonment. I am not necessarily proud to announce that I am the firstborn of pain that was left embedded in a family secret. To know me, you would have to know my history. Intergenerational. You should see my latest family portrait. It is framed in power and control and painted with a dark shade of abuse. Each family member has a strong resemblance. Pain displays the same destructive behaviors from the cycle of abuse. My siblings all have strange but familiar names, such as verbal, emotional, sexual, physical, financial, and my oldest brother is spiritual. Now that you know my family history, let me share the precise moment when unexplained, unhealed pain is left under a blanket of loneliness and covered up in a bed of isolation. It begins to gradually take the form of a scar that resides on the heart. Just like a nurtured baby that gradually develops into an unbalanced adult. And guess what? I was also nurtured behind countless masks of smiles and within the fragile walls of fantasy. Consequently, I was devoted to a permanent position called scar. Unexplained, unhealed pain travels throughout the body, within the blood vessels, and results as symptoms such as nightmares, emotional numbness, irritability, inability to relax, outbursts of anger, depression, and sometimes severe depression. Crying with voice here are tears that appear emotionally paralyzed, reflected through a trance-like stare. The urge to scream is resting on your lips, but you know the only one around to hear your cry, to answer back is the original source that gave birth to your first traumatic experience. Then pain makes its grand announcement to say, "I'll see you later." That is Scar. Scar's a piece that I wrote a couple years ago. Didn't even understand why, but it kind of captures the overview of my message. And I'm not going to get to finish it all, but just kind of give you insight a lot of where I'm coming from. Q's trauma camp. Q's is, I want to go here first because I listen to the stories of families that have the IDD of their child that's been diagnosed with IDD in the group home, and here's stories here. I got the idea of cues when I talk with families that adopt children, and they're diagnosed with IDD. None of these symptoms, what you just heard through scars, was not explained. The trauma behaviors was not explained up front. And so we have a lot of parents behind closed doors just really do not understand. You have workers in these residential facilities do not understand. So this is a story about Lucas, was placed in a home. She said 2 and 8 years of age. Um, Understanding what his first years was truly consisted of, it looked like lots of scars. There, the multiple placements, was six multiple placements. In fact, there was 6 multiple placements before actually coming into the group home, into the adopted home, and was born crack, a meth dependent baby that endured multiple traumas, including the neglect abuse and more than probable sexual abuse before the age of 3. And throughout the last 15 years, the mother was telling me that they've tried to have therapy, they've gone to hospitals, now in the group home, and and be, and anyway, she was just really in tears talking with me, and she says, "I want him. I want my son to have the ability to try one last time." But continuously to be moved from group home to group home. And so the trauma is the root of his behavior and acting out. if he can finally understand that mom was saying, well, can make some progress. This will not be easy, nor will it be one time a week. She was pleading to get him on my schedule. She says, I'm begging and pleading for him to have one more chance to see the other side of his trauma and start to love himself. And so she's thank you, and then she said, pray for my son. This is just a story from a lot of the population of my clientele. When adopting a child with disabilities, the adopted parent struggles with knowing uh, how to deal with the disability, not knowing how. 135,000 children are adopted in the United States each year. Help, urgent requests from the adopted parents. So this is where cues come from. I decided to put together a training. Q is goes back here to compassionate understanding emotions. And so I started very small, talking with the parents, teaching them, because helping them to be released from their own guilt and their own pain, um, feeling guilty and the shame behind closed doors, not knowing and not being able to speak out, afraid of their own labels of what's going to happen to them, because they're saying, I feel like giving up. I feel like turning this job, taking it back to the system. And I'm hurting. I don't know the answers. And so this is let me just take out time and help the parent take some of this drama, help them to take the pain out of situations. There's some things they can change and some things they can't. And so we're looking at the next level here. Um Beginning it with the parent, was said a growing need for the trauma treatment in the IDD client, um, compassion focused trauma treatment involving all the stakeholders, and interventions for the trauma and teaching. So I've developed a concept called the village concept, and actually adopted from the proverbs of it takes a village to raise a child. I believe it takes a village of clinicians, the parent, all stakeholders, and at least 3 generations I try to get in my office, from the child, the parent, and the grandparents, because now I'm integrating that intergenerational message that has actually raised the mom, and mom is functioning from that the generation from her parents, and her parents is, there's just a certain way we do things. And now I'm listening to the client here, they're saying, I'm hurting. And so we see the traumatic behavior acted out. So now we are removed, the person is removed from the home. They're placed in residential facilities. And you have a client here, a child here, or an adult here that still, the scars is still waiting to be understood, waiting to hear, because there's so many invisible scars, but it's continued to be passed on. And when I wrote scars, I visualized at the very end, when is the pain going to end? Because scar now is in my spoken word here, is now sitting on Heartbeat Street today, observing all the younger scars taking up resident, still coming in, taking up resident on Heartbeat Street. So we individual with intellectual and developmental disabilities, they, live well into their adulthood. They may cope with an array of degree of mental challenges, and trauma reactive behaviors. But when the proper training is not, we look at, okay, the clinicians, we are trainers, we go to colleges, we go to the universities, and we have our plaques on the wall. One of the pieces that is really, I'm observing from my corner of the world is that limited sensitivity training that creates that human touch, restores the human touch into the workplace, into the residential facilities, into the placement of the person that is a 24-hour service around the clock. And what I see has bothered me to the point, and this is why I've come up with the training and talk about um how the staff in the facilities lack the trauma informed training. Um, when I facilitate the training for the staff, but it is mom, is the client, is the staff, is all the stakeholders that have connection with this one client. We're all getting the same sensitive training. So adults and children with IDD are underserved. There's a need for clinical, non-clinical, healthcare providers, families, and the consumers to receive specialized practical, clinical, trauma-informed training.
Dr. Brown Ramseur, it sounded like at first you were talking about this as a family intervention, but it seems like it's a systems intervention. You're working with everybody who surrounds this person.
Yes, everybody. I I think it's about 3 weeks ago I had, and I call it a village.
Yeah.
When there is a client comes into my office, whether it's IDD, whether it's just regular mental health, inflicting harm, um, I look, this pain that I see is not just an individual pain. It is from damaged relationships within the family, and not just that family, that primary family, but now we go into the next generation.
Yeah.
We go to the next generation. So I had about 40 family members in one session a couple weeks ago, that bringing the generations together. Um, grandparents was saying to, and so I present a platform for this one child's voice to be heard. And it's amazing and powerful how healing to bring the generations together, but hear the innocence of a child's voice. Say, Grandma and Granddaddy, I love you, but when I come to your house, the language that you use hurts me.
Mm.
Mom, Dad, when you all are yelling and when you are fighting, it makes me want to go under the bed, So I provide teddy bears in my office and soft pillows. So as this is the trauma informed piece that I integrate, they can hold on to a teddy bear, or they can hold on to something soft, because when you do the tracking of the clients that come in, regardless of, sometimes this is before, we have to remember that 90% of the time when the client comes into my office, they've not have given a mental diagnosis yet, but they have been given that, gone through the experience of trauma, and they have the pain, they have the scars, but not the diagnosis yet. So that trauma informed piece is really, really important there, that being sensitive to who is in front of you. And so that's why they have the teddy bear, because sometimes this soft stuffed animal or pillow has been my feeling that gives me that sense of safety. It keeps my secrets. So I go back and pull out a lot of the principles in our counseling that we kind of like put to the side, a lot of the theories, and go back to just basic, sometimes just reality therapy, just basic sensory therapy, restoring the human touch back into the workplace and working. So I said the next level treatment is a brain-based root analysis process of understanding trauma, reactive behaviors, and the integration of the post-traumatic survival skills into the life challenges of the client, okay, with intellectual disability, the dual diagnosed client. Actually looking at the post-traumatic symptoms as, maybe if I change, it's the symptom with this population, we call it symptoms, they call it survival skills. Okay? These are survival skills I learned when maybe I was in the closet, staying out of the way from the violence. When the son trying to protect the mom or the little sister from the perpetrator. We look at some of the symptoms we call symptoms today. Maybe it was a survival skill for me. I had to be on edge all the time because that was maybe in my environment. I had to adapt to living in this environment. I had to just be on the hyper vigilant all the time. So the non-traditional mindset and skill building that generates an innovative spirit of restoring the human touch by developing a compassion, understanding of emotional symptoms. This is what my base of my training as I get the generations together in my office. I don't know how much time I have. You can tell I don't talk very
I got a
much.
quick question. Go ahead,
Oh,
Bonita.
no,
See you got a question.
I just had a quick, well, I don't know how quick the question is actually, but I'm wondering how you go about getting generations of family members together when there's been so much difficulty in that family interaction over the generations. I'm just, I'm trying, like, I'm in awe of the fact that you can pull them into a room together to talk about this.
It seems like a lot of times they wouldn't want to talk about the secrets, the family secrets, so.
Yeah. How do
But you know,
you do that?
it actually amazes me, the power of the innocence cry of the small child in that family.
Mhm.
That 11 or 10-year-old or whatever the age is that comes in is inflicting. It's amazing how families, they will put aside their differences when it comes to a child in their family that is hurting,
Mhm.
that is attempting suicide and running away and so it amazes me. With this particular family, I can say you had the teenagers was talking and said, "Thank you, Dr. Wanda. Our family has needed a setup like this. He said, all my life." So nobody talks. So we cuss each other. The alcohol, all these secrets, and the grandmother, everybody began. It's just that spirit that seems to take over
Mhm.
when it comes from the innocent of the child here is crying for help. So I used the energy of the child to actually send out the invitation and talk with and some of these in this family, there was a divorce between the mom and the dad. They were not talking at all. And dad's first response was, "I do not want to be in the same room with that woman." And I'm coming back and using a soft tone of voice saying, "But it's not about you. It's about your love that you have
For this child.
that's going to help bring healing to your daughter."
Right.
So
So-
focusing on not their secrets, but the love that they have. There's some love underneath all those secrets.
Mhm.
Families have they've lacked down through the years that communication strategy,
Mhm.
how to express this love, because now you got family beliefs and messages. You don't talk, you don't feel, you don't trust. You don't talk about it. The
Right,
very things that's been taught down through these generations is exactly what the child is crying out for today.
right. Absolutely. So once you get them all in the room and you're facilitating this process, um, how does that go then? Like from first session to second session to third session, like how long typically are you working with that family? Or
Well,
and the service system that's there too, because you're absolutely right. We all surround the person with the need, the person with the intellectual developmental disability, the person who has the mental health challenge. We surround that person. So I think we're all the village in that person's life and need to be part of that plan. But what does that look like then going forward after that first session?
after the next session is with the child alone. Want to get feedback from the child. I empower the child to be the leader of this process. They get to talk about what it felt like. What did they get from it? And they can say, and so now the child would decide, most of the time the child will say, can we have another session?
Mhm.
Can we
That's
have another session?
empowerment for someone whose power has been taken away for so long.
Right,
That
right.
uh,
And
it's a
I've
give back.
designed a,
Yeah.
yes, I've designed a workbook for the child before we have the village.
Mhm.
And the title of it, A Child's Voice Matters. And so the child has time to actually write from their view what the problem is in their family. Empower the child to even be able to write so they can share their recommendation,
Mhm.
how the problem can be resolved.
Right.
They write what they need from their family village
Mhm.
in order for prevention. So putting that platform there, it's just amazing what happens when you get the generations together.
Mhm.
Um, Mom, and the dad in this was just a lot of hostility, but it's just something happens when this child starts talking and the tears and pleading, and you have the brother, she had the brothers here, one was 18, 16, was talking, they was able to be honestly and share with the little sister how much they were about her and
Right.
how it hurt them when they found out she had to be taken to the hospital because of the inflicted self-injury. And this conversation would have never happened if it would have been in the home, because we don't talk about our feelings in the home. But
Mhm.
they was able to talk, and so they was able to talk in my office. The mom and dad began to talk, and it just like everything, nothing mattered. In the session, it ends up nothing matters but helps this child to be saved.
That's incredible.
So,
The
yeah,
wisdom.
so I'm sorry, you.
Sorry, I interrupted you there. I'm just picturing the power of a child sharing their experience, their thoughts, their wisdom, and their belief in what needs to happen. And I think it's amazing and I think it's very true that children quite often will know the answer when someone helps them talk through what they're thinking and feeling. They know.
Yes,
And people do know typically at the root
yes,
what's
exactly.
different
And
wording,
when
but yeah.
so when you think about trauma, um, changes the dynamics
Hmm.
of people's thoughts and their feelings and the family system. And so the worst part of my trauma becomes my secret.
Hmm.
But sometimes we as clinicians, we miss the secret ourselves because traditionally we think the secret is A, and that may not be the secret that is hurting the family.
Right.
Yeah. And so when you bring the generations together, you can people they begin to talk.
Hmm.
Once the child, it's almost as though the child gives them permission.
Right. And
Yeah.
pleads for them to speak. Truly.
Plead for them.
Hmm.
Plead for mom and dad to, I love you. They plead for them to
Hmm.
begin to talk.
Right.
Um, it was so interesting. This big 18-year-old getting ready to graduate high school. He told me, he says, Dr. Wanda, I'm going to be honest with you up front. I've already said this is not going to work. It's wasting my time. And it makes me feel kind of funny to feel all these emotions. So I had planned not to come.
Right.
And I was influencing my brother not to come. And he said, I don't know what happened. He said, this is so different. I just decided just to come, but I already made up my mind I was not going to talk, and nobody else going to talk. He says, we have never talked. In our family for years, we scream, we cuss each other out. It's centered around alcohol and abuse, the domestic violence. So and that's all I've known all my life.
Hmm.
He said, but because that's all I've known, it's not what I wanted. He said, feeling in here. So I ended the session, believe it or not, they all joined together in a family hug.
Wow.
Everybody was crying.
Unreal.
Tears,
Yeah.
tears were shattered. And it 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 was just,
Uh,
it just brought them all together.
That's
So
good stuff.
that's where cues come from, the cues trauma camp. The next level treatment integrates a village concept that provides a framework for helping the clients.
Right. That's amazing. I just want to say, I know we only have a couple minutes left. Um, I
Okay.
suspect that there are numerous questions about your model. I don't see any written because we're all really engaged in listening. Unless Babs, you see any there. I have, and please feel free to put questions in the chat if you have anyone. But I
Okay.
think how you do this is something that we would love to probably have another
Yeah.
discussion about in future. Like, what does this program look like? What do your workbooks look like? I have a feeling you're onto a very innovative um, process for
Okay.
Well,
intergenerational.
Yes.
yeah, we're going to have you back, Dr. Brown Ramseur.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you
Okay.
that you're
Okay. I
fascinating.
wanted to
Yeah, go
show
ahead.
one right here, and I'm gonna show this, and I'm gonna be really quiet. We all are familiar with Maslow's, hierarchy of need. And so we function, our clinicians, we teach this now. This is our foundation. This is our go-to. And so what I am looking at is, there is this is my concept here where, we're treating up here the trauma. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. The psychological needs, the food, the water, the water. So if our interventions we're looking at before any of this happened, that sometimes, and so I talk about the trauma in the womb.
Mhm.
Okay. And so this right here is where I see
Right.
the trauma. This is where my work is coming from here. This is my own kind of Maslow's Dr. Brown concept.
Picture of the toppling needs. Yeah.
Because your physiological needs aren't being met because of the
Mm.
trauma, and it's disrupted the rest of the pyramid, is what it seems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, so I'll end it there, but that's where I'm coming from, I'm looking at, and so if we can teach this and teach interventions to
Yeah.
our clients here, to restore the human touch in here, then everything else, then now we can go back and um
Stabilize the pyramid.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That,
yeah,
it's fascinating stuff, and there's not near enough family intervention in our
No.
work. It's all focused on the person, which is important, but we've got to get this family history engaged in this because that's what has brought this to where it is now in a lot of cases. And
yes,
so I think this is fascinating stuff. I just thank you so much, Dr. Brown Ramseur, for being here with us today. And I hope you
thank
will
you.
come back and visit with us again and
Oh,
continue with this because this is
I'm looking
fascinating
for
stuff.
I'm up for adoption. I'm looking for a home.
Well, I have a funny
You're
feeling you're
adopted.
home.
You're adopted. That's
Thank
all
you.
right. So thanks to you, Dr. Ramseur. Thanks to my co-host, Juanita St. Croix. Thanks to
Thank
our
you.
producer, Babs Tierno. And thanks to all of our audience. And of course, we do this every Tuesday at 12:30. Dr. Brown Ramseur, you're welcome to join us anytime for the fascinating presentations we
I
have.
will. Thank you. I
Wonderful.
will.
And
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much, Juanita. Appreciate you. Just thank you for the
Talk
opportunity.
soon. And Bruce, thank you so much, as always. Our
well,
fearless leader.
so join us again for the Clinical Consultation Network. We do it every Tuesday at 12:30. See you,
Thanks,
folks.
everybody. Bye.